Today I want to talk a little bit about polyiso as it applies to flat roofs, and specifically I want to talk about tapered insulation. All right, Chicago, welcome back to another edition of our YouTube channel. I'm Jim from Anchor Point Roofing. We're an honest roofing company here in the city of Chicago that specializes in flat roof repairs, steep slope repairs, and we can put on a damn good new roof when we need to also. Today I want to talk a little bit about polyiso as it applies to flat roofs, and specifically I want to talk about tapered insulation. So tapered insulation is a polyiso product, and it allows us to pitch and slope roofs that are in trouble with ponding water. There's other applications you can use it on, such as a drain. I'm going to show you some pieces of polyiso that are tapered, how we use them, some of the names, and show you a little bit about it, and then I'll go into when it's applicable. So let's start with just showing you a few pieces of what I'm talking about. Every roof, polyiso, it needs to be insulated, and these are insulators. So here's the first one. I've got 3 or 4 of them here I want to show you. This one goes from 1.5 inches on the low side to 2.5 inches on the high side. And if you take a look at this insulation from the end, you will see that it's tapered or it's pitched. So it goes from one to another. You can imagine putting a roof together like a puzzle, how this would help and benefit. So that's one piece. Here's one that goes from just 1/4 inch down to 1 inch. You can see. So take a look at this one. Different product for a different application. Same product, but a different size so we can get it sized properly. These are just a few we have here in the shop. A couple more quick examples. So here's 1.5 to 2 inch. These all have names like A, AA, Y. I don't know all the names yet, but I'm learning them. Here's one. Again, you can see how it's tapered insulation. Here's 1/2 inch. This one's been cut off. We actually use it on a roof, but 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches. And again, you can see the angle and the pitch. All right, last one, I promise. Here's a smaller piece that we'll use on crickets. This one is 1 inch to 1/4. This is more like a fiberboard. You're not gonna get much R value out of this one. This is one we use for like crickets. We've got a cricket video that you can go and watch if you haven't seen it yet for building around skylights and things like that. But polyiso has some R value, and the R value is the thermal resistance. So basically what the code says is they want, if you're building a new building, they want to see an R30 on your rooftop. Some of those pieces that I showed you that were 1.5 inches, 2 inches, they maybe might like somewhere between, like, let's say an R5 or an R12. One of the examples I use to kind of drive it home for homeowners is average Chicago wall. That's insulated to like an R19. Your roof on top, if you're building a new building, architects and inspectors want to see an R30 up there. So the tapered insulation is going to allow you to channel the water, pitch it around drains, redesign roofs as needed, but it's also going to provide some of that R value, some of that thermal resistance that you want on your roof to keep you nice and toasty in the winter. If you can imagine the tapered insulation going down, it's going to be obviously different heights in different areas. So what happens with the Illinois Environmental Code, the Energy Code, when you've got 4 inches on one side and you've only got 1.5 inches, what do inspectors and architects say? What do they want to see? Because it's really hard. What they allow you to do is average it out. So you can take an average of the entire roof. Obviously, if it comes down to 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch near the drain, you're not going to have that full R value as you do the side that's got the 2.5. So inspectors, architects, they'll let you average it out. Now, let's say you've got a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot roof, pretty large, and you need to pitch the whole thing one way. Or let's say there's 2 drains in the middle and it's a fairly flat roof, and you need to get that water pitching towards those drains. You can have it designed by a professional, and it will pitch it, and they'll draw it out as long as they have the dimensions of the building and exactly where the drain is. There's a few companies that do it. We use ABC, great company, by the way, and you give them the drawing and the plan, and they'll spec it all out. Again, with the ABC, you need a B panel here and an XYZ over here. I'm terrible at the alphabet. I'm terrible with math, but I can build a good roof. One thing you do want to avoid is sometimes the crickets, like this piece I was showing you here. A lot of times these will be cut into an angle and turned into a cricket. So will the normal polyiso. One thing we talk about when we come up on the roof, especially if I designed the polyiso, is you don't want it to look like a bag of Doritos exploded on the rooftop. That's one thing that you don't want. Nobody wants their roof to look like a bag of Doritos. That's why we use ABC. ABC Supply uses something called Tapered Solutions. Again, you put it where the drains are, you put the perimeter of the building, send it off to Tapered Solutions. In 24 to 48 hours, they will draw all those panels for you and ship every single one. So roofers that don't have, the biggest brains can put it together and get it right with help from ABC Supply. So that's what I want to talk about today with the tapered insulation. Let me show you a couple of photos here of kind of how it goes together, and this will drive it home a little more for you. This first one here is what we do around a drain. So you can see in this picture, it's a schematic, the cutout of the roof drain, and you can see how the polyiso has been tapered and pitched. So all that water in a rainstorm is going to run right towards the drain. You can check that out. Here's another one. One more other example of it around a drain. You can see some of the crickets, some of the triangles. In this picture, you see all the plates where it's been fastened down to the roof and everything is pitched properly right towards the drain. There's a couple different companies that specialize in designing it and putting it together. So all we have to do is come down and put it down with screws. If it's a concrete deck, we're going to glue it all down and put it together like a puzzle. I can do puzzles, I just can't design rooftops. That's it actually today for the polyiso and the tapered insulation. It can be used in a lot of different applications. Sometimes if you've got it just in a corner, you can build a cricket. Sometimes if ponding water is out in the middle of the roof, there's just not much you can do about it. But tapered insulation gives us a lot of different options to build and channel that water as best we can. I'd like to think we're pretty darn good at it here at Anchor Point Roofing. That's it. If you're a homeowner looking for a roof repair or a contractor looking for the best materials, Anchor Point Roofing is where it's at. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one, Chicago.